everyone. Welcome back to Cybersecurity StandUp. Is it Wednesday?
Yeah, it's on Wednesdays we wear
It's
pink.
Wednesday. On Wednesdays we wear pink. That's the crucial moment here. We're back on the show floor. I'm at the Uptycs booth, number 427, with two incredibly special guests, the co-hosts George and George of Knuckles and Brass Tacks. George, number one, can I have you introduce yourself first and tell the people a little bit about what you do at the moment?
Sure. George Kamide. I am co-host of Knuckles and Brass Tacks, also executive director of the nonprofit Mind Over Cyber, and have some, I guess, exciting job news coming up, but that is TBD until June.
Okay, keep it on the DL. And George, number two, over here.
Hi, so I'm George Al-Koura. I'm the CISO. I'm a CISO. I currently work for Ruby Life. You guys all see me. I support George. I'm not part of the Mind Over Cyber crew, but I'm their biggest cheerleader and fanboy. So you'll probably see me at every MOC event. And realistically, this is my passion project as well as George's, and we spend way too much time doing it.
Very relatable for me on that, actually. Yeah, this is just one part of my job, but I really wish it was the whole thing. Yeah, absolutely. So guys, let's dive right in for the experiences sort of happening around us right now. You're on the show floor. I presume you guys have walked around a little bit and kind of taken in some sights. What are your first impressions? What are you seeing? What are you loving? What are you hating?
Do I have to start with what I'm loving? No. I think it's a lot of what we see every year in terms of either relying on too many buzzwords, although I will say there's less AI than I thought there would be. I thought it'd be like AI all the things. And then, as you can hear from the sound around us, it's really loud, even though we hear repeatedly from practitioners that they actually want to have quality conversations, and those conversations become impossible in an open floor plan. The things that I am seeing that I like is more engagement with communities, and ideally less reliance on just sort of mass scanning of badges. So there have been a lot of off-site events, as there usually are, but some of them more on the party side of the spectrum, and some more on the informative educational side of the spectrum. But in the main, I see more engagement with communities, or a need, or a recognition of the fact that security buyers are now congregating in groups that sellers don't have access to, and should you hose your reputation, that blast radius is much larger than it used to be.
Great point. What about you? What are you seeing? What are you responding to?
All right, so in terms of the good things I'm seeing, it's the sheer number of people in our industry post-COVID that are now clearly physically back in action. It's really wonderful to see everyone again. I've missed people. I've missed a lot of people. I've gotten to meet a lot of people the last couple of days that I've only known online, which has been super cool. Real critical thoughts on the trade show and the expo. Marketers are going to hate me for this, but I think I'm not going to get an expo pass next year. George and I both kind of agreed that the actual value of this event are all the things on the sidelines. So if there are meetings I want to have, I'll arrange the meetings with the people I want to see in advance. I'll go to the events I want to go to off-site. If I really want to have a substantive sales conversation, I've had a couple this week, I'm not going to do it on a trade show floor. I'm not going to do it with an SC I have no relationship with. I'm not going to do it with someone who's just going to hand me off to someone else. I'm going to talk to someone at that organization who's relevant that I know, and we're going to talk about my business privately, probably elsewhere, somewhere quiet where I don't have to yell. So I do think, as George just pointed out, the trade show and the expo experience is great, maybe for folks who are outside the executive level. But if you're actually a buyer and you want to sit down and think and talk numbers and really solve for problems, the floor is not the place to do it. That said, I do think there's value in knowing if there's some new emerging technology, new product release, that's really cool. Or there are new emerging companies, so the startup space that you don't know about, especially if you're not in your region, right? That's where there's value. So I did take time to walk through and see kind of the early stage startups. But like I said, again, I just not seeing the same value. We saw this at the start of Black Hat as well. There's not really much value in walking through the trade show floor and engaging with all the companies you already know.
And to his point, the early stage startup area, all the booths are standardized, which means they really have to stand out on merit and conversation. They can't afford to dress it up. They don't have bells and whistles. They don't have somebody shouting about an F1 car. No F1 cars.
So zooming out for a second in terms of like who knowing that you're at the CISO level and you're having this experience of like, there's not a lot of value for me here except for in certain areas. Who is this now for? Who is the RSA show floor actually useful to?
If I was looking at it from my opinion, folks that are at probably like the team lead or practitioner level, which is kind of unfortunate because a lot of people at that level can't afford or organizations won't pay for them to come out here.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that should really see it because, if you're going to get a live demo of a tool or even potentially get your fingers on the keyboard for a second or two, you want to have your operators doing it. You want to have your managers doing it, right? Me as the executive, I'm going to turn to them anyway and be like, cool, I've worked and I saw these 3 tools. I want you guys to play with all of them. Which one do you like the most? Okay, cool. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to go talk to numbers with their team, right? So that's the way this thing has to work now.
Yeah. I think most people misunderstand that the CISO's hands have been off the keys for a very long time.
Right.
And so, yes, to his point, if there are live demos or you can get really into the weeds with a sales engineer, it's got to be the people who are going to be using the tool day to day, or more realistically, they don't want another UI. They're going to have conversations about how do I ingest your feed into my existing stack.
I'm not going to lie to you, I am Santa Claus for my team. So if my teammates come to me and they say, hey George, we really like this tool, we like this SIEM solution or whatever it is, I will smash walls and break heads to get them that toy.
Wow.
Right? Because that's what they want.
Right.
I need to satisfy my operators. That's the success of my operation. So I really think that supplier organizations need to consider not the CISO perspective. Your pricing should be to the CISO perspective, but the tool, the usability, make it for the operator. Stop selling it to me. I don't use it.
Not the first time I've heard that being reported about the people who need to have their hands on the keyboards are the ones who maybe should be here. But is that not happening? Are those people here? You know what I mean? Like, are they walking around? Are the practitioners here?
Yes and no. Some tend to be independent consultants, or they're advisors and they're shopping on behalf of several clients. A few of the bigger organizations can afford to bring, VP SecOps or CTI lead or something, but by and large, those travel budgets have been going down or getting constricted, so it has been really hard. And the people flying in are, like George, who are here to actually maintain the relationship or meet with existing suppliers, not like sort of discover net new suppliers.
Fascinating. Okay, I want to change gears a little bit because we have limited time here on the show floor. Let's talk about bare knuckles and brass tacks. Let's hear the quick pitch of the podcast in case people haven't listened before.
Sure. So I was on the product side, he's on the buyer side. So originally we started out as kind of a sales and marketing podcast to talk about the trust divide, but over the last 2 years, we've listened to the audience, and I would say now it's more about the entire sort of human messy side of cybersecurity, because we've covered career development, we've covered skills growth, we've covered things like sexual harassment, we've covered a lot more than that initial conversation, and I think that's where we're going.
Amazing. And I think this year you're doing something very cool involving an armband. Can you tell me a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so the Ally Armband, as you can see it right here.
Yeah, flex on them.
We started officially the release of this movement with Mind Over Cyber. Obviously, that's George's organization with our friends Carlos and Maria, but it's all one big family. They're all part of our crew. This armband represents a safe space for people because we've experienced and we've seen a lot of our guests and a lot of our friends who aren't guests, particularly women, people who are minorities, talk about abusive behavior, talk about sexual harassment, talk about positional abuse. And we wanted to provide, we can't change bad behavior, right? I can't fix assholes, but we can provide a safe space for people to look for an ally in the room where maybe they feel anxious, maybe they feel nervous, maybe they're going through a tough conversation that is, inappropriately tough. Maybe someone's groped them. Maybe they just want to get an Uber and get out of here. Maybe they just want a conversation to end, or they don't want some creepy guy to follow them around or gawk at them. That armband is their safe haven. Those who are wearing the armband know it comes with a duty to protect those in our industry. At the end of the day, I kind of bake it down to don't be an asshole, and that's what we're trying to push. The allyship is really just that sort of bridge in the gap where it's like, okay, you are not by yourself, you're not alone, you don't need to take this abuse, you have a friend even though you don't know it, and we're the ones that are there to help you out and make sure that you have a good time and a good experience. Because as George pointed out, he was saying in a conversation earlier this morning with someone, you come to these shows to further your career, to further your business, not to get harassed. And that's what we want to build.
Amen. And so, congratulations, first of all, and thank you for starting this. What's the reception been like? How are people reacting?
Yeah, I didn't know what it was going to be, but it's sort of blown up. I think I need to make more. So these came straight from England, from a guy who makes armbands for Premier League soccer teams. So, yeah, I have to order more. I was on the phone this morning on the street, and some guy I have never seen before was wearing one, and he was like, and I was like, that is really cool that sort of spread out. And the people who came to Mind Over Cyber said, I'm going to be in the booth, and people are going to ask me about this, can I take some more? So my mission is to flood the zone, entire conference season, not just RSA. Wherever you're going, you should be wearing it at all the off-site events, because one, it generates an important conversation, but two, it does its job, which is just, there's a friendly face in the room that's going to help if I need something, if I need just a human shield, if I just need somebody to get me out of this conversation with this other person.
Which, that moment is a game changer. That is a game-changing moment, to be able to look around in a room and know that you have a safe person to stand with. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. It's true allyship. Allyship is action, Allyship isn't just these words that you say, it's something that you do, and you guys are showing up.
Yeah, I mean, we say brass tacks for a reason, because we have an allergic reaction to admiring the problem.
Well said. I love it. Let's talk about Brass Tacks for a hot second. Now, so you guys are hosts, which is a very different experience now that I'm interviewing you, I'm sure. What's something that you've learned being a podcast host?
It's really giving a platform to somebody to have the space to articulate their thoughts. So you don't want to ask like super leading questions, but you want to understand enough about their background and their context to, open up a space that they can then fill, But at the same time, you need to guide a conversation, because no one tunes into a podcast to just listen to banter at the bar. It's about a specific topic, and keep it close.
The other thing too is we don't take money for this show. I mean, I talked to George about this from the very start. I said, hey man, we have jobs. Like, money is not what we're doing this for. Though we do have a great online store. People should check it out.
Just launched, right?
Just launched. But that's just paying for our hosting fees and for the trips. But no, like, we specifically don't want to take sponsors, because we want freedom of expression.
Yeah.
We want people to be able to express themselves, call out bullshit behavior when it happens, celebrate good things, celebrate innovative ways of conducting the business, and that's what we're about. That's what we look for in our guests. I know I've really enjoyed, I do a lot of guest research. I spend a lot of time actually doing that. I really like going through and having well-articulated questions with our guests. As a host, I've actually found, from an industry standpoint, the last 2 years, my perspective has grown so much. I mean, George will jokingly say, I'm a CRO in disguise. But the fact is that I've gotten an understanding of the sales side of the business so much. The way that I practice, the way that I run my line of business has changed. The way that I advise my companies, other companies, has changed. I probably could step into a pure BD or sales role at a leadership level as a result of doing this show for 2 years.
Definitely.
So I really enjoy that I've intellectually grown as a result of just like George and I having a drink one time at Black Hat. We were real exhausted. We're just like, we hate this shit. Let's start a show. And, everything came out of that.
One of my favorite origin stories for a pod, really. I love it. So where is that taking you in the near future? I mean, is this something that you can offer as a service, or where can we go with that? Seems invaluable.
Yeah, so it is now officially BKBT Productions, and we have more shows in the works that we'll be producing. And we have been in conversations with conferences to provide keynotes, and also different organizations have asked us to do workshops for sales teams, or whether it's talk at their SKO. So that's really exciting, because it's not just us, but ideally we're bringing the collective wisdom of what we have learned on the show. And I guess this is also a good time to tease the fact that we are also in the midst of writing a book based on everything that we have learned on the show. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the works. It's been a very useful creative outlet. I mean, you can be this industry observer and just sort of like swirl and rage on your own, or you can also try to like, tangibly create something out of it.
I will say that we look not. All right, I love movies. You guys, I love Jerry Maguire. Have you ever seen that movie? Back in the 90s, I highly recommend it. It's a Tom Cruise classic.
Okay.
Before Scientology, Tom Cruise. It was pretty awesome. So, Tom Cruise is a sports agent, and essentially he has an epiphany that the way that the business is done in his field is absolutely wrong. It's toxic. And we kind of come to the same conclusion that the addictive kind of approach that CROs and that shareholders have towards growth, endless growth. This is destroying the fabric of our industry. It's destroying people's lives, destroying the experience. It's not about endless growth. We believe fundamentally it's about having substantive relationships and conversations. Maybe you don't have 100 leads in your pipeline. Maybe you only have 10 calls that week. Maybe you only have 2 or 3 substantive calls that week or that day, but those calls lead to relationships that get renewed year over year. And that value for the customer is real. That relationship for you as a seller is real. We believe that this is where the industry needs to go, to be a place that attracts good people and that keeps good people for years on end. This era of hyper growth, I mean, look, we're all in this to make money, but we're not in this to kill ourselves with toxicity.
For real.
Right?
For real.
So if we get back to a place where we're actually having good business conversations with each other, we're actually caring about each other as people, and we're really trying to solve one another's problems, that's the revolution, quote unquote, that George and I are trying to push. That's what this whole thing is about.
Yeah.
And if we can move that yardstick just an inch closer to it, then we've done our job.
I think you're on a great path to doing that. Yeah. What would you say? So I think that kind of pitch, a lot of people would be like, yes, that sounds great, but how do we do it? So obviously something like the Ally Armband Challenge is you're living it out. In what other ways do you find, like how can you do that? How can you live it out? How can you build those relationships and actually have authentic, trusting, credible, kind conversations with people?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with setting expectations about what is reasonable to expect from, for example, a sales team, or even what marketing is, right? Marketing is actually about creating a market and engaging with your customers and your prospects. Marketing is not sales. The paradigm is kind of shifted where it's like, what have you brought me lately?
Right.
So if we can address and set the expectations around what each department does and the rate at which they need to do it, I think we can begin to have those conversations. It's about sustainable growth, right? Like, sure, you can go on the logo hunt, which is what startups usually do, but if you churn and burn those customers, you will find it harder to acquire those buyers when they inevitably move on. George will not always be where he is. Is he going to take those relationships with him? The sellers aren't always going to be where they are. I know that's really hard, especially for VC-backed organizations, but I think we've seen kind of 3 forces at work. We have seen technological change where providers like Google are saying, like, we are going to start throttling you if you're sending more than a certain number of emails per month.
Yeah, right.
So that affects technologies like SalesLoft and Outreach, so you can't just spam everyone at once. We've seen economic changes with high interest rates, so the money is no longer free, you can't afford to borrow it, which means the metrics change. You don't necessarily have to go on the logo hunt, you actually have to retain the customers because it's super expensive to churn and have to go after new customers. And then we've seen cultural change. I feel like this is not really spoken about, but like the CISOs today are not the CISOs of 2012 or of 2010. And they have different buying expectations. I touched a little bit on it, the fact that they are sitting in WhatsApp groups or Slack channels and talking amongst each other. They buy differently. So you have these 3 things changing all at the same time. So if you just think you can kind of copy and paste the SaaS 2.0 sales model from 2014 to 2019, I just think you are very mistaken. But I don't think a lot of founders know that. They come from a technical background. They just think that was what we did at my last company. And so it's really about sales and marketing leaders setting those clear expectations.
Great answer.
And I think it's about practitioners as well. Like, don't abuse the sellers that you work with. Like, I consider my sellers the ones that I've had relationships with for multiple companies year over year. Those are really trusted relationships, and after a while, they become actual friends. I don't abuse them. I don't just go to their cool events because I want a free dinner or I want to go to a sweet like sporting event or whatever. Like those are great. If I'm genuinely interested in your product, sure, I'm going to do that to facilitate the relationship. But really, the responsibility is you don't want to abuse like the gimmies and the freebies. I like to think that there's value for time and there's value for seller time as well. And I think, if I treat my seller well, he's going to treat me well. So when it comes down to negotiating discounting or price allocations or, hey man, like I've talked to my board, I've talked to CFO, can we get under, a couple thousand here and there? Like I had a really good, I could say this as an example, I had a really good renewal interaction last year. Year over year inflation on this product was about 7%. It was all right, but it was a core product to my team, right? My CFO, my CIO really, really didn't want that uptick in price, right? So I'm at the conversation. I remember I was with my account executive, who is a good friend, and we were at an event, we were having a good time. We were, maybe had a few pops, things got a little bit loose, and we looked at each other in the midst of it, all three of us. By that I mean the three spinning, and we said, "Hey, man, so year over year 7%. Can you meet me in the middle?" And he looked at me, he's like, "Hey man, like I know it's gonna suck for me, but like I'll go down, like I'll drop the inflation, I'll drop the year over year." And I looked at him, I said, "Hey man, look, like what would be the number that would still look good with your director, but you could help me out with?" And so he's like, Can you do 3? And I was like, "I can do 3%. So all right, that was a deal. And we shook on that. My CFO, my CIO were happy, his director was happy, we all won, we had a great Christmas.
Yeah.
They say cybersecurity is not a technology problem, it's a human problem.
Ew.
Clearly the industry holds the same, but we think of the industry as just pure technological solutions to all the problems.
Right.
But behind the scenes is what matters.
Absolutely.
Let's not forget the one biggest lesson, if people are listening to this, is trust. You sell, you do business with the people that you trust. If I trust you, I will bend over backwards to find a way to make it work. If I don't trust you, you could be handing me the greatest sweetheart of a deal ever, I'm going to run away from it.
Yeah. Amazing. If people want to find you guys, if they want to find Bare Knuckles Brass Tacks, if they want to find Mind Over Cyber, where can they find these things?
Just find us on LinkedIn. We don't really post anywhere else, and the podcast is syndicated wherever you get your podcasts.
Also, check out for the online store. If you look us up online, it's one of the first Google hits you'll see. And I am on Twitter, so you can find me on there as well. But by all means, check out your Spotify, check out Apple Tunes. We are on there every single week on Monday. Episodes come out no matter what, whether I'm in Serbia, whether George is in Texas, whether we're on the road, planes, trains, automobiles. We are putting out show every week. Monday, check us out.
Making it happen. Very impressive, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me on the floor today and on Cybersecurity StandUp. I can't wait to have you guys back for a longer episode at some point as well. That'd be super fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you out in cyberspace.